Are you ready?
We are live.
I need today's date, 16th. I'm going to open the urban renewal. What do we classify this meeting as?
Retreat.
Retreat of May 16th. Jacob, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Doug Neely.
Here.
Commissioner Sean Cross.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
Commissioner Denise McGriff is just arriving. Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Chair Frank O'Donnell.
Here. So tonight's meeting is a little bit more nebulous in its goals, although they're stated in the memo. Maybe Mr. Conkle wants to rephrase them for us, if you want to lead off with that, and then I'll follow with my own thoughts on it.
Go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Graham.
Good evening, Commissioners. I think we're recorded, right? Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Today, we have several objectives hopefully we can accomplish. One is to reaffirm the categorization of the projects, to focus on the vision of the Urban Renewal Commission, pick the projects that most fit your vision, prioritize the projects that have been chosen, and authorize staff to research construction cost estimates on the chosen projects. Now, just before we start though, I want to make sure that you have all of the documents that we sent you. Obviously, the staff report is one of those documents. Then we provided you with project notes, which is a description of each project and a relationship to existing conditions. And I want to point out that the notes that we've given you, each of the projects correspond in the exact order that they are in the plan itself. The other item that I want to hope that you have is it really was an Excel spreadsheet that categorizes the project, but also corresponds to the projects that are also listed in the plan. You have to the far left a UR report number, and that's where the projects are numbered according to how they show up in the plan. For instance, Rossman Landscape is the first project that's in the plan. You'll see on your Excel spreadsheet number 1. So I just wanted to make sure that it corresponds.
Mr. Graham, it's Rossman Landfill, not the Rossman's Landscape.
Did I say landscape?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You might mean Clackamas Landscapes. You were combining two projects.
My deputy is here, be aware.
Maybe I'm just hungry. But, so we have that. And also, you also would have received a little later on today, a listing of all of the projects by acreage. And then, of course, the last item you should receive is a large map. You probably couldn't, I don't know if you could print it out, but we have a version of the large map here of the Urban Renewal District, city-owned property, urban renewal property owned, and maybe some other properties that are also listed or identified in the district. So those are the documents that we hope that you all have. Again, this discussion. I'd like to suggest that we start off, if there are no objections, to the project notes. This will help us in discussing further the projects.
Where do we find those that you're going to reference?
They would be
Page 7 of your packet.
Page 7 of your packet.
Page 7 of the staff report?
Yeah, it says projects in the 2007 Urban Renewal Plan, project notes, description, and relationship to existing conditions.
That's exactly right.
I can only get to page 3 on this.
On Rossman Landfill.
Rossman Land.
Regular meeting here.
Projects in the 2007 Urban Renewal Plan, is that your document?
That's correct.
Yes, that's it.
Project notes, description, and relationship to existing conditions. So everyone has that. We can start discussion here with the Rossman landfill. Now you have a a description of the project here, and also the relationship to existing conditions. Some of this was derived from your earlier discussion from the previous retreat, and some of it was taken from the existing plan. But just wanted to open it up for a discussion on Rossman, and then we can go forward with other projects.
Chairman,
Well,
I
how
have a
about-
question.
Commissioner.
I like this direction. However, I think it would help us to go back and revisit very briefly the vision statement. And as we go along, then when we're talking about it'd be nice if well, we can't do it on both screens, can we? So it'd be nice if we had the vision statement up so that we could so it's visible, and then kind of keep that in mind as you suggested as we're talking about the projects. I can't say for sure that everybody went and reviewed the vision statement again. We've got it in front of us, but it doesn't hurt to just sort of maybe briefly talk about what the broad topics were and what we were trying to achieve with that, not getting into a horrendous discussion, but just briefly okay, we got livability, we know what that is, we've got tourism, et cetera, the big highlight, your big categories, four big categories.
And those were stated in the staff report.
Right.
Right, and also, it's also a vision statement in your packet. I also included the vision statement in your packet.
I have that.
It's an overview of the vision statement in your packet.
Has everyone had a chance to review it and aware of the criteria of the vision statement? Okay. Let's do a brief overview. I don't want to go into the Rossman landfill in depth. We've been into it in depth. I think everyone up here knows where it stands. If you want to do a quick survey of it, I've got no objection to it.
Okay.
But, I'm going to make an opening statement too about what I want to accomplish. So if you want to do an overview, I'll allow that to start off.
All right, well, I was just going to mention something about the vision statement, but go ahead and make your opening statement.
Well, here's how I feel about urban renewal, and I've been on it for 5 years. And I'm only going to say this, I hope, for the last time, about those that make it happen, those that watch it happen, and those that wonder what happened. And I know that we have never wondered what happened. I can say that for us, at least I hope not. Maybe, I see a grimacing look on Commissioner Smith, so maybe that he takes issue with that. But I want us to be the people that make it happen, and especially in those areas where the reason I ask for properties that we own, either by the city or by urban renewal, I don't want to sit around and wait for someone to come to us with a proposal. I want us to be a driving force. We know what this city, we have a vision, I think we do, of what we want this city to be. We see things happening. We see a new vitality to the north end of town with such enterprises as Corner 14 and the Oregon City Brewery. And as we see Rossman potentially progress, I think maybe one of the projects on here involves another part of the north end. And I probably would speak to that at length later, but those properties that we own, either city-owned or renewal-owned, I think we need to push to generate a request for a proposal as to what we want and see what we get. And like I say, the city's becoming more vibrant by the day with those kind of private enterprises. I know that there will be private enterprises that we do have to wait for them. But on those city-owned and urban renewal-owned properties, I'd like us to be a driving force. I don't want to be a stick in the stream carried along and then somebody brings opportunity to me. That's like being an economic development coordinator, and I'm not picking on you, but I've seen it in the past. I don't want to sit and wait for the phone to ring. I want to drive things. So that's just my summary, and I may be more specific about a project that I see that I'd like to push for maybe a movement. But if James Graham wants to give us an overview of these projects, I think it would be a good start.
All right.
I couldn't agree with you more, Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, let's begin, if there's no objection, with the vision statement.
Stay close to the mic because it's...
Let's begin, if there are no objections to the vision statement.
Okay.
One of the statements in this overall statement is that within the Urban Renewal District, residents live, work, and play while having access to various amenities, including vibrant visitor experiences that attract the public during both the day and night, well-presented historical venues that provide visitors different vantage points of the community's past, enjoyable recreational opportunities of various types and venues, livable environs that enhance one's quality of life, efficient transportation options that move people in and around the district, and sound investments in public infrastructure that complement and support private investment. That's quite a statement, but it seems to capsulize everything that we've talked to about in the past. Now, we've broken down the vision statement with certain goals, livability being one of them. And you have, before you, are sort of a list of bullet points of the various elements of livability. I won't go through them all, but one of them is protection of community neighborhoods, unique identities, locating tourism amenities in appropriate places except neighborhoods. That's the first one, and I'll mention one other, provision of various housing options with different price points. And those are at least a couple of those items, but there are more. Tourism opportunities. In this situation, we're saying creating an environment that offers amenities that establish a sense of viability, excitement, and wonder attracts visitors during the day and the night. The district will offer the following amenities that are designed to solidify the city's brand as being Oregon's hometown. Now we have, once again, bullet points under tourism. I'll just name a couple. Enhance the upgraded end of the Oregon Trail Interpreter Center. And of course, increase the use and improved Amtrak station. Those are just two of several of them that are here. Recreational opportunities. The ability to establish recreational opportunities offering various types of outdoor and indoor amenities, man-made and or natural, and contribute to a higher quality of life for residents. Investments in establishing the type of recreational investments supported by the Urban Renewal Commission include trails, biking, walking, good water quality, accessible recreation at Clackamas Park and John Storm, just to name a few. Infrastructure investments. This goal states that new investments in a variety of infrastructure projects are designed to help mitigate the challenges of growth in the district to allow visitors to enjoy all the amenities that the district has to offer. As visitors drive into Oregon City, the provision of the following assets will assist them to efficiently move in and around the district from one end to the other and to engage various events and activities taking place. Now, public restrooms is one of those bullet points. Quiet zone along the railroad route downtown is another amongst others. There's an overall ending statement that summarizes and closes out the overall vision statement, and it says, the attributes of livability, infrastructure improvements, recreational and tourism opportunities are interdependent and serve to enable the district to provide a positive rate of return and helps Oregon City solidify its status as a regional center within the Portland metro region. Mr. Chairman, that's the vision statement that we all have worked on over the past weeks and months. And now, if there are no other questions or statements, we can go forward with the project notes.
Questions by anyone?
Chairman, I just think we're reaffirming what we said and how we're going to make the proposals match up with those, or actually the proposals need to meet those.
I agree completely. I remember those criteria. I also remember things that Commissioner Neely said about, generating jobs, generating housing. I remember words that were spoken over the years about live here, work here. I mean, all those things that we could accomplish while increasing the value of this community. If we do this smartly and we have some successes, we can generate TIF to the point where it will be self-sustaining hopefully more, possibly relating to closing the district earlier than anyone ever thought possible because the returns are so large. But we need to be smart in our choices. So if you want to review the individual projects, and then if anyone wants to speak to an individual project, as Mr. Graham touches off on, please pause after each one and we'll see if anybody wants to speak to it. Go ahead, James.
Sure. The number one on the list, not necessarily in area of priority, but simply the first one listed, Rossman Landfill, description of project. Now, this project is a mixed-use land lifestyle center consisting of approximately 950,000 square feet of retail space. Now, we're looking at 100,000 square feet of office space, as it says so in the plan, and 250 residential dwelling units. It's anticipated that urban renewal investment is approximately $30 million. And it's anticipated that the private investment is approximately $240 million. So that's the description of the site. Its relationship to existing conditions, the property is a brownfield site. It will require significant steps toward rehabilitation. It is expected that it needs to be developed that will generate enough tax increment revenues that would allow the organization to finance other types of projects identified. It's a new project that will be expected to assist with funding transportation projects, including I-205 highway and the interchange phase 1, Washington Street, Abernathy Road improvements, and the creation of through streets. Now, the transportation and public access improvements will improve access and circulation throughout the urban renewal project area for autos, transit, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and will support the new development and redevelopment throughout the urban renewal area. So that's the Rossman landfill. Any comments there?
I won't dwell on that except to say that that project we sat here in our prior meeting, we talked about the developers in search of funding. We see that they're after brownfield grants. They have not made any ask of urban renewal as of yet. The numbers that I've seen in terms of what it could generate in increased property value and taxable values and TIF are so huge that they would provide a war chest for us to accomplish other things. So I think we're in a position on that where we understand where it is, and we'll see how that moves forward and deal with the outcomes as they occur. Thanks.
The next project is Clackamas Cove. Now, this is a mixed-use, it's identified or described as a mixed-use housing and commercial development consisting of approximately 180 condominiums, 86 townhomes, 43,000 square feet of office space and restaurant space. Now, this development will feature approximately 40 acres of parkland and open space along approximately 36.38 acres of water recreation with 2 docks and space for the Sheriff's Marine Patrol and canoe launches. Now, the Urban Renewal Commission is expected to invest about $8 million in this project. The private sector is expected to derive $160 million from that private investment. The relationship to the existing conditions include that the development at Clackamas Cove will create an increment that will allow the city to offer greater development assistance to other projects. The increase in value of this property, if the proposed project is successful, is expected to generate tax revenues that would allow the agency to finance other projects identified in the Urban Renewal Plan and the report. The Cove faces many environmental problems, as you all know, and parks and recreation improvements will provide for additional park and open space needed by the community. Are there any statements there? Any questions?
Questions or comments from the board? Commissioner?
Yes, so I'm looking at the 2007 Urban Renewal Plan, and, okay, there it is. I was thinking, what happened? Okay, it dropped off to the bottom. So I think this project, obviously, we have regained control over this project again with the property that still needs to be redeveloped. And I guess I think that what I would like to see with regard to this is that a substantial majority of any new housing that's built there if we were to do a request for proposal, that we definitely ask for that housing to be affordable. And maybe we put in some income guidelines, whatever the statement is for income, which has been established by the state. I think it's really important that we look at any projects that we do that involve housing, that they not strictly be market rate. I think we have to blend in some housing that meets a variety of needs. And I think that would be a good thing. I think the one thing that I found just kind of troubling about this particular project is I was not aware from the beginning, after it was approved, that we had lost the opportunity for the open space. And so one by one, sort of the amenities that were supposed to be supportive of this project kind of whittled away for many reasons. And I know that there were good reasons at the time, but I would hope that we would definitely put some of those back. I think it would be an enhancement to the area. I'm not so keen about the Sheriff's Department having their facility in there, particularly if we want to talk about non-motorized vehicles in the cove and trying to get the water quality and doing things that would promote the health of it. So adding motorized vehicles to me kind of would be a problem, and maybe there's a better place that we talk about having the Sheriff's Patrol relocate at, as opposed to being in there. So that's kind of how I would like to see that project
I think with on these updates, we're taking the existing language.
I know, I'm reading it right in the plan. Yes.
So, you know, projects that are going to move forward,
Right.
we're going to have to tailor new narratives
Oh, exactly.
for what they are. Because, like, you know, in that case,
So
you know,
that's
Marine
just my
Patrol's
thoughts
already
about
been
that
moved
particular
over to
piece
the
of
Willamette
property.
at this point.
Commissioner Neely?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and of course, I think it has to wait for the study to be finished, but my guess is there's not going to be direct boat access to the river. And so the sheriff's, I think some of these things are just going to fall out in the planning and and as the study progresses. And so I think a lot of the concerns you expressed there are legitimate concerns, but I think they're going to be dealt with in the study.
Yeah, I believe there's a number of things that need to be resolved before it moves forward. Water quality mitigation, funding from the surrounding areas. I presume we've shelved, did we get all the design stuff from the previous effort? Which was supposed to be, supposed to have happened and maybe did,
Yeah,
maybe didn't.
We've got some of it. I don't know if we have all of it.
Okay, so we basically have to restructure an approach to this.
I don't see us all using a lot of the stuff. I mean, we can use it as a base, I think, to move forward, but that was just, you know, you wanted some comments about, or some thoughts about
Sure.
the particular project, so thank you for that.
And I know you're a champion of affordable housing, and I know that that's going to be a challenge
It's gonna be a
because
challenge.
investors want a return on their investment. So we'll have to deal with that when the time comes.
Happen.
I believe we had enough on that. Sir, if you want to proceed.
Right? The Metro Transfer Station. Now, this is a major commercial use complementing development of landfill and consistent with Oregon City's regional center development. Based on your discussion last time, you had mentioned that there's no further investment in this publicly owned property because they were contemplating or trying to move and trying to relocate. And I remember Commissioner McGriff said it was unfortunate, but they have to start from ground one.
Well, I'll say this as plainly as I can. If they want to move, I won't get in their way. Because I think that would be an excellent site for the next hotel with a great on and off access, that the room tax would contribute much more to our economy overall than what we currently get in terms of these funds that we distribute. I think that initial approach by them was doomed to failure by Metro because of what they had where they had chosen to go with proximity to the Clackamas. And I don't know where that stands now. Has anyone heard anything from?
Yes, I'm still on the committee. It's basically been permanently tabled.
Okay.
To be honest with you, based on the work that we had done as the subcommittee, I believe that they could have overcome the issues with the old quarry and any problems with water quality. It was doable. I'm not sure exactly what doomed it, but I do want to say for this particular project, in the interim, there may be an opportunity to expand Metro's educational resources there by having a facility there would provide education about recycling and reuse and those sort of things that they've talked about that would go along with some of the newer transfer stations that they have. But I think in the meantime, we need to keep this project on the list, but it's probably lower priority until Metro comes up with another location that they think would work. Because, we can't really make them move. I mean, it's not
I know.
within our purview, but it is something we need to look at for the future, as you said.
So that educational approach, would that involve expanding their footprint or doing it?
Yes, it probably would involve expanding their footprint.
Okay, so that'll come into play when we discuss development of the Stimson site, which
Yeah.
is adjacent.
I don't think they've looked at that, but one of the comments that came out of the study was we looked at splitting it, so they would take some of the truck transfer portion of that facility and move it elsewhere, and then keep the household hazardous waste, the recycling, all of that to follow up with this educational facility. So that was an option that was on the table that the committee supported, if that was an option. Because really the big issue has to do with all those trucks coming in and trucks going out, and then sort of backing the system up there a little bit.
Well, I toured that with them a couple of years ago, and there's improvements to be made just in flow of traffic and
Yes.
such, but nobody seemed to be making them.
They are in the process of completing the work that they need to do to get that out to bid to do that.
Yeah, they could increase their throughput if they wanted. Mr. Graham?
Amtrak station. Now, at the last meeting, there was some discussion about whether or not this station has been completed. And as the description states, the city has constructed the first phase of the project, which consisted of an entry drive, limited parking, and train platform for loading and unloading passengers. Now, phase 2 consisted of acquiring and moving a historic depot to the project site, building additional parking and landscaping the area. The Urban Renewal Agency has committed $1 million in urban renewal funding to complete phase 2. Now, the depot can be leased as office, restaurant, or shopping space, or used as public train station. Now, the relationship to the existing conditions that this station will allow for improved parking, strengthen Oregon City's status as a regional center, and promote general accessibility as well as allow a greater public access to the region. Parking improvements will improve the visual appearance and attract more passengers from throughout the southern metro region. Transportation and public access improvements will improve access and circulation throughout the urban renewal project area for autos, transit, pedestrians, and all that you see here. So that was the discussion last time, and I believe you want to have some discussion as to whether or not this project is actually complete.
When you speak about the historic depot, are you talking about the one that's already located there?
Yes, that is the historic depot.
Okay, the way I read it, I thought maybe there was a second one that you wanted to bring in. Questions by the commission?
I'm going to make a comment. I think parking at certain times becomes a major issue, and I'm just thinking of the concerts in the park and so forth. A lot of people are walking some distance to get to it, looking at alternative parking spaces. And I'm sure that the Amtrak station's parking is mostly taken up by people attending the concerts in the park at that point. And so when we're looking at the Stimson property and also the Amtrak station itself, there might be some thought of getting additional parking available in that area.
I totally agree with what Doug just said. I think we have to look at these in total, not as isolated projects. So, and as one that enjoys concerts in the park, among with others who sit up here, additional parking would not hurt the effort. Mr. Graham, if you'd like to proceed.
One more thing. I think that while phase 2 has been done, I think that some additional improvements could be made to the platform to have better cover when the weather is not so great. I mean, you kind of get off the train and then you're there's that one little area, and then you have to walk down the ramp to get to the parking structure. Seems like there'd be a better flow that we could help make that happen.
Well, let me ask Mr. Conkle, I'm not sure about the division of property there, that what is the railroads, what is ours, what is leased to the leaseor?
Yeah, I'd have to do a little research. I'm not sure on the platform component. I'm imagining that's Amtrak.
I would think.
That's a good question. I haven't really looked too intensely on that one.
I understand the direction of Commissioner McGriff. I'm just not sure who controls the property and exactly, if you're speaking about immediately exiting the train,
Yeah.
and would that be, those are things that we'd have to see who owns the property. I think it's a good effort, and I think it's worth looking into. The question is who owns the property.
Yeah, I know that, when it was /restaurant/bicycle shop, there was a little space inside, so when the weather was bad, that you could actually wait inside the building, but then now the Coasters has pretty much taken up the majority of the
Yeah.
space. There really isn't any place. I mean, you're kind of there huddled against the building, or you're waiting in your car till just before the train comes to stand out there, so.
County Shops property at 902 Abernathy Road. Now, at the last discussion you had, there was some recognition that the project was moving into private hands. As in terms of description, housing and mixed-use development consistent with development of area and Oregon City's regional center development. The county had indicated a price of $5.1 million for this purchase. Should the Urban Renewal Agency purchase this property to facilitate this development, the agency anticipates a return of a portion of this investment to match its purchase price. The agency anticipated a private investment of approximately $40 million. And as I said before, the property is moving toward private ownership. That was the last statement made relative to this piece of property.
Yeah, that's my question. Is that property still acquirable if so desired? I thought it had moved toward private acquisition, and I'm not sure of its current status, to be honest. Because some of that would be like the old vector control, correct?
Yep.
I'm not sure of the status of that property, if it's tied up in a real estate agreement or if it's available.
We've only heard rumors.
Yep. Well, the property's moving to private ownership.
Moving to private owner.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
Well, that was 2000.
Yeah, I wouldn't make it a priority because I think that is where it's heading.
All right?
If you want to proceed with the 12th and Main.
Sure. Number 6, city-owned property on McLaughlin Boulevard, and that's 12th and Main. Conceptually, the agency is seeking opportunities for commercial mixed-use development that is consistent with Oregon City's regional center development. The agency is prepared to invest approximately $2 million to create a private investment of approximately $15 million. In terms of its relationship to existing conditions, development of this property will support the rehabilitation of existing commercial buildings in the urban renewal project area and will assist in the development of additional medium and high-density housing in the area. That's all I have on that. It is.
I do have a question. I noticed that I can think of one, there's probably more than one.
Doug, could you talk directly into your mic? Because your
Yeah,
head is
excuse me.
down, and I'm kind of missing half of what you're
There I
saying
go.
there.
There have been private entities interested in that property, and then they, for one reason or another, it ends. And I'm just kind of curious, what seems to be the major problem with actually marketing that property?
There is no problem marketing this property. I get calls on this property.
I think there's a difference between marketing it and the feasibility of constructing
Exactly.
it. There's a very deep storm line easement that kind of goes diagonally through the property, which makes it hard to, you can't just put a building over that easement. So it's always been, how do you get down to that I think it's a storm line it's pretty deep there. And then, we've got the retaining wall on 99E,
Right.
but, you've got some pretty significant infrastructure investments on both frontages that are remaining. on Main Street as well as,
Well, I guess my question, that was my understanding too. I always heard the stormwater easement and so forth is part of the problem. My question is that something that we want to invest in, is dealing with those issues to make it saleable? I mean, is that what you're talking about in terms of the investment that might be made to that property?
well, I think that's probably, I think there's probably two options. One, right, try to move that storm line, which I think would be difficult. The second is that's part of the investment, is to try to come up with a design that accommodates it. Now, I've seen, as we've seen increased property values, as well as, when you're getting into 3-4-story buildings, in order to park it, you're essentially getting parking kind of like half subterranean because it's up against that back wall. So, a couple designs that we've seen historically have been trying to go more of a retail on the front, but with parking in the back, which allows you to get to that easement through some type of a parking structure, podium construct. But, it's just it's right down the middle of the property, essentially. It does make it difficult to try to construct a building while allowing enough access to be able to get into a deep line.
And I would say, as we do a comparative evaluation of these properties, if 2 million gets us a 15 million investment, that's a 7-to-1 payback. What else do we have that would maybe yield a higher return? And everything you said about the property is true. I might add, I was by it the other day and I saw your name shining there to contact Tony Conkle if you're interested.
He wants that off of there.
Oh, no, that stays. That stays. Hey, even if he retires or leaves, that stays.
Yeah.
Obviously this is one of the handful of properties that are owned, vacant, ready to develop, but similar to developing in a floodplain, it has some design issues that warrant investment.
It does, agreed.
Okay.
And there is a great deal of interest in this property. My office gets calls on this property a lot. Matter of fact, just last week we had 4.
Do we have a design around that would, no one's ever come up with it, where the parking is subterranean and access to?
I've seen preliminary, architecture sketches. Now, I haven't seen anything past that. Nothing design, engineered, clearances. That might be the investment we make, though, is looking at some of the design constraints, potentially.
I think, as you just said, I think that's worthwhile because you provide a solution to a prospective buyer. He knows immediately that this would be an acceptable solution and then could make a decision as to whether to invest in it. Commissioner Smith.
So the property on 12th Street is listed as City of Oregon City, not Urban Renewal.
Yes, it's the city.
And so I know in the past we've talked about cleaning some of that up, and I know that we did clean some of it up, but then I also remember the conversation that really it doesn't necessarily matter, because if Urban Renewal ceased existing, it all goes back to the city anyway, those properties. But I'm asking that because that property is, kind of listed as Urban Renewal, but it's still, marked as city property. Do we worry about that? And then on the same respect, the City Hall property is also still listed as Urban Renewal, which I think might be something we want to discuss. I don't know that City Hall's going anywhere anytime soon, but it probably will go away in the next decade or two when we build a new facility up here. So there's some of those properties that still are labeled one or the other that we might want to chat about at one point too.
I guess I'm not as concerned about the ownership. I guess if you had a Prosper Portland or a Portland Development Commission in the city, right, 2 agencies acting independently, our Urban Renewal Agency acts independently with the properties that they own and the investments that they make. If there's a city property, it would almost be like a private developer, right? The city is going to represent its interests, and if there was Urban Renewal ask for a city property, there is probably some type of an agreement between the 2 separate agencies as to, the city's going to put the property in, Urban Renewal Agency is going to put money in to accomplish A, B, and C.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah, I'm not concerned about that. I am sure that if we came up with a request for proposal, that the city commission would be inclined to hear the request and act upon it favorably or unfavorably if we were to propose something. So I'm not so worried about that. The disappointment that I have about this particular property is I did follow up with a school teacher at Tumwata about when his students were going to come in, the top two boat getters, and show us what they had thought about with 12th and Main, and he kind of went, oh, I kind of forgot about that. So I unfortunately don't think that that is going to happen before the end of the school year, but it would have been really fun for us to see some of the creative ideas that Commissioner Morrow and I saw that the students came up with, and they particularly chose 12th and Main. And I think that there were some innovative things that occurred there that allowed for parking, allowed for the development of a building, but also left some of the easement area vacant for uses that could be there, such as I think they had some outdoor space, they had a garden of some sort, and then they even incorporated the retaining wall into the project. So, you know, if eighth graders can come up with something that's creative, I am sure that we could come up with a request for proposal for some ideas for that project and put that out into the universe and have it come back probably equally as well.
Well, I like Mr. Conkle's idea. I think if you define the difficulties and the solution, then the prospective investor does not have to invest money that may bear no fruit whatsoever. He knows coming in, this is what are acceptable solutions.
Or she.
Or she. I'm old school. To me, he encompasses all genders. But I don't want to get into that discussion.
I'm just razzing you a little bit.
I think I cut off Commissioner Cross earlier.
My only question was, is there an estimate of what the investment would be for the stormwater?
I've got
alignment?
I've got a note here to go back and dig through previous pre-ups and maybe talk with engineering about get more specifics on the depth, you know, every foot down, the wider the trench needs to be, you know, what do we need for specifics for that? And then, I mean, and honestly, the second question is, can we move it? You know, if in our master plan, it envisions going a different route with that stormwater. I just know down in that area, I think on the other side of the street is under a building. I know that one's been a line we've struggled with over the years.
I believe that you did report that to us some time ago, and it was extremely expensive, and I don't believe the master plan said that we were going to be moving that because of, as you stated, the depth was to a point to where it you know, I mean, we'd never get the return on investment to even try to do that, because it's been talked about for years, and I know we saw one proposal, and all I can remember is that it was a sleep type business that was looking at building something over the top of it with the parking, and unfortunately it was not the type of use that we felt would be appropriate at that location, is the way I will phrase that. So I think if we put out a request that we would look at something that would get more feet on the street, so to speak, plus add value to the rest of the building.
Commissioner Neely.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up another example, but I know the 15th Street failures of the stormwater system there resulted in Public Works having almost all its budget, well, much of its available budget of it directed to that. And if that's an old facility, I imagine at one point it's going to fail on us. And whether you want to deal with it as an unbudgeted piece for the city or something that the Urban Renewal Commission can actually deal with, so that in the future you have a facility there that's more accessible and well, I guess that's all I have to say.
Well, I view it as an element of full disclosure at any potential buyer, and again, removing obstacles to potentially selling it. And also, you may make the decision at some point that it's just not feasible, and then you make a decision, what other good use can we put this to? And then you're done with it. You don't chase it. Mr. Graham.
The next one is Stimson property at 1795 Washington.
Hold on, I have a question, and it has to do with sales of properties. When we sell a property, and like the one we we entered into an agreement on at the bottom of Singer Hill and Main Street, do we put a time constraint that the buyer must do something on the property within a certain amount of time?
Typically. Yeah, usually we have timeframes in there because
Okay.
the sale's contingent upon usually issuance of a building permit.
Okay.
Otherwise, it reverts back. So usually there is a timeline to get through, your pre-app, your neighborhood association meeting, your land use. After land use, you got to get through engineering. So we usually have a timeline identified and to
Okay,
perform.
I didn't want speculators buying them, hoping for an increase in value with no development. What we actually seek is development. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Graham, please proceed.
Empson property located at 1795 Washington Street area. Now, in terms of description, this property is located between the city's Amtrak station and Metro station and has been discussed as a site for a major Class A office development with lower levels of parking consistent with Oregon City's regional center development. The agency is prepared to invest approximately $10 million in urban renewal funds with an anticipated private sector investment of approximately $60 million. Now, associated employment will improve the jobs balance in Clackamas County and Oregon City. Development will complement what occurs on the landfill site. Proximity to I-205 provides excellent visibility and access. In terms of its relationship to other existing conditions, the development of this property will support the rehabilitation of existing commercial buildings and the renewal plan area and will assist in attracting medium and high-density housing to the area.
Well, I've got a lot to say about this one, because this one, I think, fits in very well with the potential development of the Rossman landfill. And this is what I say, I mean, from the simplest things of additional parking for concerts in the park, to if I view this as being a complementary project to the Rossman landfill, I look at it, and we're at a point in time where that developer is seeking brownfield assistance that I believe our city staff is in a second position to gain knowledge on brownfields. That money is available at this point in time. I think, and knowing that inner city wants to get out of areas like Portland and move to the suburbs, and the complementary aspects of if there's going to be housing right across the street, what is more desirable than walking across the street to work? So this is one I would like us to actively pursue. And the other thing I want to say is, yes, I know that the landscape folks are there and they've been good citizens of this community and will continue to be good citizens. They talk about nothing's going to happen for a period of years. It's going to take at least 2 years to get anything launched. They can make any number of choices, including relocation. And my understanding of urban renewal money is it can assist with relocation. And please verify that, but I've been told that by others. I want to be fair to these folks. They've been good citizens of the community, but the timeline would be such that we could move forward with doing something 50 to 100,000 square feet of this very type of building, which is in demand, be fair to the current occupants, and do a project that's complementary in every way to the Rossman landfill, assuming that project succeeds, and it looks like it's driving hard towards success. Thoughts from the commission?
Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think whatever happens there will be complementary to what happens on the landfill site, and I think you're quite right. I do have a question, though. The property directly across from there that I don't think is part of the landfill site, I think, is that all in private ownership? Is it across Washington Street from the Stimson's property?
So across from Stimson, we've got, kind of going north to south, you've got the landfill.
Yeah.
Urban Renewal owns a small lot there, used to be the Chamber of Commerce building. You've got, I think it's the still lawnmower kind of.
Starks.
Yeah.
Starks Lawn and Garden.
And then you hit, end of the Oregon Trail, parking lot and property.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that when we're talking about this, we ought to also talk about the other properties. I'm sure there's going to have to be some infrastructure changes on Washington Street as the landfill project goes forward, whatever that project would be. And I'm sure we're going to have to secure space perhaps for road widening if we don't have it already. And I think both of these, on both sides of the property of the Washington Street there, I think we have to be inclusive in terms of our planning for both sides of Washington Street.
I also feel we should consider the success of the end of the Oregon Trail and any opportunities to complement its offering. So I think if there's one project on here because of size and payback and complementary to the Rossman landfill, this is one that I think is worth actively pursuing. Among all projects on there, it's a manageable size, and I think its payback would be huge. And I asked Mr. Conkle about this is urban renewal owned property. It's going to need a brownfield, I understand, because of the Stimson deposits in there. And then I asked Mr. Conkle, maybe he can explain to us, if the Urban Renewal Commission were to decide to pursue a request for a proposal, what is that process? And if you'd be kind enough to recite it for the balance of the commission.
Yeah, I think that if an urban renewal owned property, and let's say we figure out, if we want to put money in it, we've dealt with the vote, so we have funds that we can expend. So it's directing us to look at, some type of an RFP, an RFQ, and that could be general. We want, X square feet, we want Class A office, we want some commercial. So we would have to have that discussion, or if we're going to leave it open for proposals to come in. So I think if there's specificity around what exactly we're looking for on that site, that would be something we would probably come back, have a discussion. Do we want to invest in, architectural drawing of kind of this is what we're thinking, so we all agree, or leave it more open? But essentially, at the direction of the Urban Renewal Commission, we would start that process and then fill in the details until the commission's comfortable putting something out.
And as the owner of the property, do we put the property up for sale, or how does that, do we retain ownership of it?
I would imagine that you could probably do
A conditional sale?
a conditional sale. I think the goal is to get the increment back onto the tax roll.
Right.
So that would, the best way to do that would be to get the development that we want, make the land sale contingent as part of the deal.
Yeah, I'd like this group to think about that, because with the timing of Rossman and knowing that there's a minimum of 2-year development, I think it'd be a wonderful complementary project.
I agree, it'd be a great complement. I just think we should wait till the Rossman project is there. That way we know what it's complementing. We go first, the Rossman project might not happen, and then there's no complementary project at that point. But I think we should wait then. I think our process is pretty simple. We just have staff do an RFP. They get out an RFP, we get a bunch of proposals back, we kind of look at that. We sell the property at that point. We can reinvest all those. It's not TIF at that point. We can reinvest it on another project, so it's not even part of our maximum indebtedness. So there's a lot of things for that, but I think the biggest part here is we need to see what the Rossman, I think we need to make sure they're going before, they had a pretty big gap to make up. And I know, looking at our list of, we have a lot to invest in it. A lot we have to invest, but at the same time, I think because this is a smaller piece of the downtown and of the district, I think we need to actually look at one of the large projects that we're trying to complement before, because it's going to change from what they showed us a little bit, not hugely, but it will change a little bit just to see where they go.
Or hugely.
I don't entirely disagree with that, and I think your point is well taken. Yeah, I like the idea of, I know one of the first aspects of the Rossman landfill is housing, which is right across the street, which is, wow, how good can that be? I walk across the street to go to work. And by the same token, I know that there's a desire for inner city businesses to get the heck out of Dodge and get out into the suburbs. And so, yes, it makes it a little less desirable, I won't quantify it, less desirable, but still desirable.
I'll have to agree with Chris really, because if we do some workspace things, we may have property there that is taken up before the development there occurs, and people are not going to be walking to their place to work because there are already businesses established there. And so it does make sense, I think, to look at how the development there at the landfill site proceeds, and then make the decisions of how the land on the other side is going to be used. Otherwise, we may get one piece so far ahead that it almost becomes irrelevant to what happens on the landfill site. But I think giving that kind of specifications to how we want that land used is legitimate. We do want it for support for the project that, whatever it is that goes onto the landfill site. I agree with you, but I think the timing is critical.
Well, yeah, and then owning the property, we put everything, even like Commissioner McGriff wants, is the housing or just affordable housing. We can pretty much pick whatever we want. The developers, you know, we can send out an RFQ, if we went to an RFP, and we can give them everything that we want, you know. This is our scoring. You get more points if you do more of these things, kind of a thing.
Well, remember, the Rossman landfill project, I believe, is what, 400 housing units?
Up to 600.
Or more, okay, I'll just say that.
Let me throw something out that's contrary to that.
Okay.
Commissioner Cross said something that I was going to say. So I don't want to base my decisions about what properties we develop based on what might or might not happen at the landfill. I don't want to hold my breath waiting for them. We've been doing that since this urban renewal plan was created. It's been going on for a long time. It's the same thing that I'm kind of starting to feel now about what's happening with Blue Heron. I've said downtown needs to continue to move forward. We can't hold our breath waiting for that project to happen because we thought it was going to happen. So what I would like to suggest is that not only do we look at the Stimson property from the standpoint of how it is complementary to the Amtrak station, what can we do to help boost that particular piece of property? What can we do to increase the opportunity for wetland enhancement? We know that at the end of that property, there's some wetlands, and Metro has worked on that. Mm-hmm. That could be an amenity to any development that might occur there. Sure, it can be complementary to what might happen across the street. And again, I say what might happen across the street, but I don't think that we should use that as an excuse to not be forward thinking like you suggested, Commissioner O'Donnell. If we're going to be forward thinking and we want to take a little bit of a leadership role, then we don't want to wait for others to have something happen. Maybe they need to make their development complementary with our development. I mean, have we thought about the reverse of that?
That's right.
I mean, I'm not saying that we don't, but let's think broader. Let's think more globally. We've got an asset in the Amtrak station. What could occur there that might accomplish both things? How could it complement the end of the Oregon Trail Center? Do we want people to come visit the Trail Center, get off the train station, be able to safely cross the street to get there? I don't know, but why not consider it? Why not take an opportunity to look at that on how we could make that property work and still, because whatever happens, it's going to be complementary to whatever we're doing. Let's just face it.
I obviously I agree with you because that was my statement to begin with, but I feel that the Stimson project, as we talked, could stand alone.
It could. It's got value. It's got value in and of itself. So.
And quite honestly, the greater risk is on that of the developer who has to build something and then market it and rent it. That's the person who's at the greater risk.
Well, there's maybe a way, I mean, there's always a way to structure a deal to where we can compensate for something like that. Again, you know, it's, as we know, the way things go, you know, somebody tries something, but nobody wants to try it because they want somebody else to try it. And then when it works, then everybody jumps on the bandwagon. So, you know, why can't we take a little bit of a step forward, try something, and everybody else jump on our bandwagon?
Agreed. Commissioner Morrow.
Thank you, Chair O'Donnell. I I agree with Commissioners Cross and Neely. I think looking at what the community is saying to us, I don't get emails in my inbox about the Stimson property at 1795 Washington Street. I get emails in my inbox about people who are sick and tired of the landfill area just sitting idle. And so I think that when we're looking at what we want to be the cornerstone of what this plan is going to be, there is so much promise in that area. And when we're looking at the Stimson property sitting directly across from the Rossman property, and when I'm thinking about which one can or should have more impact on the other one, if one is developed before the other, I definitely would want to see the larger property taking the lead rather than a smaller one. I understand Commissioner O'Donnell's points, and I understand wanting to get something forward, especially because the Rossman property is going to take a long time. But we've been having so many conversations throughout all of these meetings that we've been having about wanting to make sure that the north end is complementary to Main Street, is complementary to all these different areas. And so I think that when we're having these conversations, it should be consistent, and that we're taking a holistic view here of the district, and that includes centering the Rossman landfill. There is a reason why it is number one on this list.
Well, the
But
reason-
that doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's not number one because it's a number one priority. It's
No.
just numbered that way.
The reason you don't see anything about the Stimson property is because it's invisible to the general public.
Exactly.
When is the last time you saw an article about the Stimson property?
Most people don't even know
They
that it
don't
used
even
to
know
be
what it
Stimson
is.
lumber. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the focus and all the press is on the larger project. I mean, if we started beating the drum and developing enthusiasm for it as a complementary project, or as a standalone project, I think you would see interest in it. To not proceed, to me, is, as Commissioner McGriff said, waiting on others with their plan to hitch our wagon to their star when they could be possibly hitching their wagon to our star. So I'll leave it at that. Is there any more comment from Commissioner Smith?
It'll be a very interesting conversation because I think it's 3-3 on that topic. I see the elements of both arguments, so I definitely
I'm not
hear what
arguing.
you're saying. And I guess I don't know fully which side I'm on that debate, but I can see it from both angles. And so I know we'll talk about this more. Part of it is, the reason these other properties haven't moved forward is because the people trying to make them move forward didn't own the property. It wasn't because of what we did, was it Urban Renewal or anyone else. Yeah. So we own that property. We could do what we want with it and move.
Yeah.
Or we could sit for another decade and hope that other things happen, like we've been doing and are still doing at the Cove, which was, not successful in my mind. It was not what we wanted to build there. And so we're still sitting there waiting. So, I do agree we need to have some quick wins. And if that changes some of these other properties, it probably is going to change them for the better.
The other point I'd make is knowing this would require a brownfield. Those monies are now at the greatest availability they ever had, with the opportunity to learn from others and pursue those dollars. And I just think the time is right. And again, I see it as a standalone project. Its inherent value can vary whether Rossman succeeds or fails, but it has value either way.
I think, when you think about the properties that we own, whether it's the Cove, 12th and Main, the Stimson property, I guess one other part to think about is I think we're probably going to know relatively quickly what's happening at the landfill, right? Either they're going to find funding or they're not. Either we're going to be successful going out to the voters or we're not. We're going to know those pretty quick. The one thing that's interesting, I think, about the Stimson one, just because of its proximity, I think that it would be interesting to see what the value of that property does once they pull a building permit or start turning dirt. So you have that. I think you probably have some pretty significant upside on that property because of its location and proximity, which, we haven't really looked at that property in terms of what the value is, what the cost is. But, the higher you can get that property value, it's just one more component that makes, getting what we want a little bit easier from a financial standpoint of what needs to be invested.
And that's a point well taken. And for me, from the private sector, who wants everything yesterday and now, even the people who are pursuing the Rossman are saying the best they can hope for is break ground in 2023. Somehow, I guess I've been up here long enough that you've numbed my senses that doesn't feel like it's forever anymore. But I agree. I mean, if the property escalates in value significantly because of their success, good for us. Good point, sir. Anything further from anybody? Mr. Graham.
All right. Oregon City Shopping Center. Now, the last time, there was a statement made that unless the owners of this property can come up with some modern type of investment, there's no further investment contemplated for this property. In the way of description, subsequent to development of the Clackamas Cove, the city-owned property along Highway 99 and the development of the landfill area. The agency had anticipated that the owners of this property would modernize the property due to its proximity to Clackamas Cove and the development of the landfill area. It was envisioned that additional transit-oriented buildings along McLaughlin Boulevard corridor with parking more centralized would be developed, connecting a roadway or pedestrian bike pathway. Now, relationship, once again, improvements to this property would support the rehabilitation of existing commercial buildings in the area.
What improvements are we talking about from an urban renewal perspective?
So originally, the thought was, and Rocky, you might remember this better than I do. There was discussion about bus rapid transit or light rail coming down either 99E or 205. And then, you've got 99E in the intersection with Dune. If you're coming southbound, you take the right onto Dune to head down to Clackamas Drive, and you take the left into the shopping center itself. There was an original idea to put a new road through the shopping center, connecting with Main Street Extension on the backside, where, not exactly where the roundabout is, but trying to connect somewhere back there. When we did the Cove at Edgewater Apartments, we did get an emergency access kind of on the 205 side that ties in the Oregon City Shopping Center to the apartments. We also have a public access easement on the driveway that comes up. I think the initial thought was that there was going to be significant reinvestment in that property, and it was really trying to drive, more of that, multi-story mixed use along 99E. And I don't know, Commissioner Smith, you might remember some other details.
Well, that's pretty much it. Yeah. And I think we missed the mark on that, because I think, part of the reason, opening up the Oregon City Shopping Center and having that development planned with the Cove development would have been the smart move. But now we have the Cove kind of isolated behind a shopping center, and it's going to be that way. We could have really thought that out and saw a redevelopment of the Oregon City Shopping Center facing both Main Street and McLaughlin Boulevard, and really came up with an amazing project. It just didn't happen.
Last time we actually had any discussions with the owners. I know it's changed hands once in the last 10 years, and we haven't talked to them at all. I still think that there is an opportunity there to make some better connections. I've often wondered why the road that goes behind Firestone down to Main Street Extension, why, number one, we don't have any, real sidewalk on there, because people park at the Oregon City Shopping Center sometimes, and then they walk down and do the trail, and then they come back, and it's not super safe, but it is, it's a shortcut to get to there, and I've actually seen people do that. I think the last time I hiked it, I was at the Oregon City Shopping Center, and I walked down and then did the trail.
Yeah, there's a sidewalk there.
So we should probably re-engage those folks. I think, as Commissioner Smith said, I think there's a real opportunity there. Maybe we missed an opportunity, but maybe there's another opportunity that we haven't thought of, to really look at how that connection can be made between the apartments and kind of what's going on there. They've got all that parking in the front that people just use for parking their, long-haul trucks there, but what else could be reimagined on that frontage so it's not just a parking lot?
One thing about shopping centers, they have been under assault for the last 5 or 6 years. The internet has actually made shopping centers, particularly the old-style shopping centers, a difficult investment for a lot of investors. So the way of the shopping center is changing, and the marketplace will determine what will ultimately become of them. But they are they're still having a difficult time surviving.
I don't know if I feel totally comfortable waiting on the marketplace to do something or not do something. I mean, obviously, we've been reading in the papers about what's going on with the Lloyd Center. It's on today, it's off tomorrow. No, we're keeping the skating rink. No, we're getting rid of the skating rink. There's been a number of stories on Marketplace about, which is interesting, hospitals taking over some old shopping centers. I even heard a story about a college taking over a shopping center and, remodeling it so that it make better for classroom use. There's even one story that I heard that they turned a shopping center into a senior housing, with some major infrastructure improvements, but it seems at this point that it's still viable. But again, as I said, maybe staff could touch base with them. We don't kind of know what's going on. They don't have an on-site manager anymore. They used to. Now you just make a phone call to somebody off in some office somewhere.
That's true. I think it's owned by a REIT. But the shopping center...
So you think it's owned by a REIT?
A REIT, yes.
Yeah, Real Estate Investment Trust, yeah.
Right.
Wouldn't surprise me.
But the only reason why I mentioned the market is because the condition of the marketplace will also dictate how the owners of the property will address you. Because if they feel that their investment is not doing well, that chances are they will not reinvest in their existing. So the conversation will be led by the marketplace as far as the private investor is concerned. So that's all I have to say about that, because I think it will have a determinant impact on how the conversation goes relative to how shopping centers go in the future.
Well, we can tell them we're interested in them.
Well, I do feel that in today's world that the malls are in a deteriorating condition from a competitive viewpoint. But also, when I look at the Oregon City Shopping Center, there's a number of anchor stores down there that I feel are succeeding. I mean, whether it be Fisherman's Marine or Coastal or anything, I mean, maybe the thing to do is have a conversation with them from an economic development viewpoint and say, what
can we do for you?
What can we do for you? I mean, that's our job. That's economic development in a nutshell. What can we do for you? Do you see yourselves succeeding in the future? And what amenities, what can we route traffic if we succeed on some of these peripheral projects? What does that mean to you? Does it make it more attractive? Because I think the reason that the malls fail is that the rent per square foot is so prohibitive, they end up exiting. And also the ease of shopping online is unbelievable, and everybody knows it.
Not with supply chain issues.
No, it's. I won't go into it in depth. It's just pretty sad sometimes when you can buy something and have it delivered to your door for 30% less than you can go into a brick and mortar and buy it.
Somebody's losing money.
I don't think so. You don't lose money and stay in business. Anything further from the commission?
All right.
Mr. Graham.
The Kruger Lumber Building, 1625 Washington Street. The agency believes that the Kruger Lumber Building has great development potential. An appropriate development could help enable the view, or enhance the view even, of the Abernathy Creek. Improvements to this property will support the rehabilitation of existing commercial buildings in the renewal plan, urban renewal plan area as relates to relationship to existing conditions.
To me, this property is a sleeper. How many square feet is the dirt? Do you know? Approximate. I think it's much larger than people think it is.
It goes way back.
It's big.
It goes back.
Yeah, and I think, to me, as I see the city revitalizing and moving northward, we need to keep our eye on this and what could we potentially do with it. And again, I want to be that commission that makes things happen.
Have you been in all the way into
I have
Kruger
not.
Lumber Building?
I have not. I've got my tours scheduled. I just did the Clackamas Park tour,
Yeah.
and I'm going to do the wetlands tour that you talked about. So anybody wants to join me, feel free. But yeah, I do this tour. It would be worthwhile doing because I don't totally understand the property. Comments or questions on this property other than its inherent value and the fact that it's much larger than appears to at first glance?
Tony, isn't it correct that part of that building towards the back end is on piers, kind of adjacent to the creek? I mean, when it was the lumber company, I mean, most of us who have old houses, we've been all over that building because they had everything that you could ever want to have if you own an old house. And Bill would take you into the back and say, well, do you need this piece? And you pick it up off the rack. So, I mean, I know it goes way back there. I don't know if the company that's leasing it right now is using the full measure of it, but they may have some storage back there, but it was huge. You could drive those trucks in there and unload your lumber and then have room to turn around and get back out of the place.
Well, it's a property that we need to consider if anybody has any thoughts on it. But again, let's be a driving force and not, and again, I think it's a property that's invisible to most of the general public. No further questions on that or comments?
If you mentioned Kruger Lumber to somebody, they wouldn't know. Somebody knew, they wouldn't know what it was.
Like I said, the square footage is
Doesn't
what
mean we should
escapes.
change the name.
Do we know what the square footage of the building is?
Well, the whole property is it
Or
multiple acres?
the whole property,
Acre
what
and
the
a
square
half?
footage of it is?
I think,
Well built on.
I would say
Tony's
1.61
pardon?
acreage?
28,000 square feet or 24,000 square feet?
1625 Washington Street.
1625 Washington.
I think the total property is
I
large.
think it's on the list here, but I
Doug, you have
can't
any
read, I
thoughts
can't
on
read
it?
that.
I mean, 0.6 acres is 25,000 square feet. That's not much at all.
That's what that's what I have on the 4.61 acres.
Okay. I guess we'll have to find out and verify that because that's not large. I mean, that's 3 8,000 square foot building lots. That's all it
That's
is.
pretty small.
Okay, let's move on.
End of Oregon Trail. The facility at the Interpretive Center is in need of major renovation. The agency has allocated $1 million to improve the facility to complement the city's regional center development. The relationship, improvements to this property will support the rehabilitation of existing commercial buildings in the area. That's all we have on that one. And very little discussion occurred last time on that property.
So there's nothing in here about the relationship of the tourism goal, obviously from 2007, but yeah, that's what needs to be in this. It's a major generator in terms of bringing people into town to visit once it gets reopened again. And there needs to be some recognition of that investing in our own facility, since we own the property, is going to reap benefits to us in the long term. And it's our visitor information center as well, which is the gateway to everything else in town.
and the county.
I honestly think very few citizens understand the relationship of the end of the Oregon Trail to its ownership and operations and maintenance, and because I'm not even sure I totally do. Someone would like to tell us that before we discuss investment in it.
Well, we have an MOU with the Clackamas Heritage Partners.
Okay, who owns it?
We do.
We being the city of Oregon City?
Yep,
Yes.
And who's responsible for its maintenance?
we are,
Okay.
city.
The question is, I guess, in this discussion, what dollars are needed to improve the facility to the point it becomes more of a tourist attraction? And that sounds like tourism to me. And I'm not sure, I think that's a separate discussion almost.
Tony, isn't there a laundry list right now of improvements that need to be made to the facility that we are trying to work our way through on about how to do that?
Yeah, if I'm recalling correctly, we can get the number from the deferred maintenance assessment that Mr.
Parks
Reed
did.
did. I think it was over 3 million on EOT. For the improvements.
That's all.
And through our MOU, the Clackamas Heritage Partners are not responsible for the major sort of maintenance issues. I know they have some responsibility, but I thought it was fairly minimal.
They're responsible for running the property, right? I mean, operating the facility, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Who pays the staff?
They
And,
do.
Clackamas
yes,
Heritage
HP
Partners.
End of the Trail.
Who does, Rocky?
Clackamas Heritage Partners, which
A
is
501c3?
the Oregon Trail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that one kind of confounds me a little bit. I'd like to do more to make it attractive, and I'd love if I could put supporting attractions in that area that would even make it more attractive. But that's a different discussion. Anything further, Mr.
The
Grant?
Stimson property relates.
This may be a separate conversation after we go through this list, but are we going to, the urban renewal map or the properties map has things specified as city-owned properties, urban renewal properties, and then there's another category, non-city-owned tax lots of interest. I think that list needs to be revisited, and some properties probably need to be taken off and some need
Yeah,
to
I
be
think
added.
we had given you a map in your packet
Yeah.
just for lack of trying to not make it more confusing. We just did all 72 properties.
I would like to talk about that piece, at some point in this discussion about the non-city owned tax lots of interest, because I think some of those might have changed over the years and we might want to add a few.
What does that category mean?
Properties we were looking at
Properties
acquiring.
that might be urban renewal projects that are just not city-owned lots.
Right.
That we would be interested in potentially purchasing?
Not so much. It might be just
Yes
that
and
we
no.
invest money into it, like Rossman landfill, for example.
Like we knew Rossman was one of the projects
Right,
in
so
the
that's
plan,
one
so
that's
we
listed.
ID'd Rossman on the map. We
Okay.
knew the Clackamas County maintenance shops were identified in the plan, so we just identified them on the map, just
Yeah,
trying
so
to.
Clackamas County Courthouse is on there as property of interest.
Sure.
But,
Which is,
yeah.
hey, where do we go from here?
Well, we do have historic downtown projects, also as part of your project notes. There's several of them here. The courthouse being one of them. There's also some discussion last time about seismic retrofit to support residences on the upper level of downtown properties. The quiet zone was another item of discussion. A parking garage in the downtown area. McLaughlin Boulevard, 99E to the tunnel was also a point of discussion in order to make it much more attractive, user-friendly, even safe, much more safe to walk on along with the traffic. And then you have Main Street, 10th to 15th Street, same thing, making it a little bit more attractive, making it somewhat more user-friendly and less threatening to the pedestrian.
That's a project that Mr. Lewis mentioned to us that we're working hand in hand with ODOT to make those enhancements to McLaughlin Boulevard, particularly at 10th Street, to get people across the street easier, provide better pedestrian amenities, a little more, safeguarding, so when people are walking along there. I believe those two projects are something that we're working on right now with ODOT, and what we probably need to do is get a better description of that project. I think isn't one of them about ready to, we're close to starting it, isn't the one on 10th? The
Yeah.
one that John mentioned that is almost ready to go?
That might be on a contract.
Does the 10th involve ODOT?
Yes, because McLaughlin Boulevard is still part of their jurisdiction.
Okay,
So
all right.
let me just say on this one, for number 11, historic downtown, it was interesting that most of the projects were very site-specific. 11 kind of went all over the, I think it became a catch-all,
Yeah,
honestly.
It looks like it.
It
Because they're all
became-
downtown.
It had a total of 37.5 million. And I do want to point out, we weren't exactly sure. So number 6 was city-owned property on McLaughlin Boulevard, 12th and Main. When you look at the projects that were kind of identified in number 11, it said 12th Street lot. So we weren't sure if the number 6 project might have meant the 2 lots just north of McDonald's. But, so, maybe this is just part of, as we refine this and we identify
It might have.
what we want to identify, I think a little bit of clarity, because really it's like 3 million for 12th Street lot, mixed-use commercial retail. Railroad Avenue infrastructure improvements, 15 million. Courthouse renovation, 5 million, possible public-private redevelopment. Downtown streetscape public improvements, 5 million. McLaughlin Boulevard public improvements, 9.5. And so I'm pretty, we've spent some of that. We used urban renewal on Main Street. We used urban renewal on 99E, as I recall. But this one was a little bit
Vague.
not defined.
I think you're correct. The one that's McLaughlin Boulevard, those are the 2 lots adjacent to McDonald's.
I think
The one
that
on the
is-
downtown list is 12th
Yeah.
and Main.
Yep.
So we might have to just clarify that.
Yeah, we might have to
think
go
you're
back
right.
and just revisit that. Is everybody on this board familiar with well, you should know about that, Doug, the lots next to McDonald's?
I've got a question there, if I might.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, let Chris go.
Oh, I just was going to say, out of all of the things that we are working at, I think the quiet zone is probably the number 1 project for our, right now, just because it's something that we can do. We don't have to worry about other things. And it'll be a catalyst to everything downtown. The train tracks run almost the whole length of the district. So it'll be a catalyst for all this mixed use we're talking about. At the property at the bottom of Singer Hill, we didn't have the quiet zone, so we're not getting housing there. If you really want housing, you want it to go all the way to, the north side, that is the project. We have the cash to do it. We don't need partners. I mean, to me, that is the most important part. If we did nothing else and closed the district and only got that one done, that would be the one.
We do need a partner. It's called Union Pacific. They are the partner.
Oh, yeah, I get that
Even
part.
though they're forcing us to do
No,
stuff.
I meant for funding.
Yeah,
We don't need
yeah, no.
grants. We actually have the cash in the bank right now.
We do?
Yeah, if it's,
We
I
do?
think the project said it was
We
going to
got
be like
we
$3
got the
million.
money.
That's a grant that's specific to
Yeah.
that project?
Yep.
We received a $2 million federal earmark for that quiet zone in cooperation with Congressman Schrader.
But I mean, it's just, out of all the projects, I think,
There's a $600,000,
At least.
at least a $600,000 local match required.
Do we have the
How much,
match?
600,000
At least
match?
600,000.
Do we have the match?
we have 6 million in the bank. According to the
Because
last
isn't that
financial
part of the
statements.
ARPA discussion?
Part of urban renewal discussion, ARPA discussion, yes. So we don't, I think 2 things on that. One was, yes, how do we have a discussion about how do we pay for the quiet zone? It was originally in the urban renewal plan. We've been working on the plan. Then we were able to successfully get this federal funding, but there is a match component to that. The second part of that is that I believe that estimate's at least 2.5 years old. So I want to caution, just with everything we're seeing right now, 600 is the bottom end of
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that, the bottom end.
But it would be, like I said, a quick win, even if it's $2 million out of pocket. You can use the ARPA money, the city can, for other things such as more water projects. But anyways, that's my idea.
Which ARPA money are you talking about using?
The
ARPA money
cities.
out of the 6?
Well, you guys were saying that if possible funding could be ARPA or urban renewal. Urban renewal is very restrictive. ARPA is less restrictive. From the city's perspective, urban renewal doesn't have ARPA funds.
The city has the ARPA funds.
Exactly. But urban renewal could take this project on by itself.
Well, I know
That's-
Commissioner Smith looks over here waiting for me to react.
Oh, I think the city could take this project on. I don't think we have to wait on the urban renewal district. The city got the ARPA money.
Well, I'll just say it was a commission priority
Right.
before this current commission, and they didn't see it as a priority, so it fell off the radar. And now we're all saying it's so important again. So I've been touting that for the last 2 years, I don't know why the commission didn't feel it was a priority, so now we're trying, we could have done this a year ago.
Well, we didn't have the earmark.
We
So
still
Rocky,
could have
If you
done
got the votes, go for it.
Rocky, we were talking about this project when I worked here.
it. Well,
It's probably not the place to discuss it,
No.
other than.
No, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah,
We
so,
can discuss it at city commission, and you'll hear my views then.
yeah.
Okay. I've got a question on those two lots there next to McDonald's. Now, McDonald's has an easement on those.
Yeah.
It's a single lot with an easement. Is that true or not?
So there's 3 lots. There are 2 lots north of McDonald's, that's the overflow
Yeah, that-
parking.
yeah.
And there's 1 in between Dune and
Right,
and
and that's what
McDonald's
we're
that
talking
has
Through that.
the easement over it, correct?
Yeah.
Now, that easement, I'm trying to think about that as being a buildable project, but is that being talked about in terms of Parks and Rec now?
We haven't had any discussions on
Okay.
that property.
My question then is this, to make this a buildable project, is the fact that you've got an easement going through that problematic?
Yes.
And the question I've got is this, how high up into the sky does the easement go? That is, can you build over the easement?
That's a good question. Really good.
I'd have to look at it. I've actually never read
Because-
the easement.
Tony, I
Because
can't hear you.
it might make it more feasible if they could actually put a structure up there. In fact, there's a tunnel going through it, but I think it's worth investigating.
That property that we're talking about, those 2 properties, if I recall my reading right, those properties were donated to the city by the county.
Yes.
Was a lot of you.
And also, and it came with a stipulation
Okay, what?
It did.
that it would remain a park.
Okay.
Oh,
Now, I don't know how long that stipulation
Pardon?
lasts, but it's in the deed.
I believe isn't part of that property, Tony, where we're talking about possibly moving the RV park,
Correct.
which would still be that, yes, there was, because it was the treatment plant.
Right.
That was the treatment plant.
Yeah. Remember, it was the treatment, for those of you who have been here a while, it was the treatment plant. The county gave it to us. I don't even want to go into the details, but when that property came up for sale, the community development director at the time tried to get the commission at the time to put McDonald's closer to Dune Drive. And instead, the commission allowed McDonald's to go in the middle of it, which of course is now problematic. But that was not the recommendation from the community development director at the time.
okay, but it's there.
It's there now.
I do think, as I understand it, a master plan is being developed for that area, right?
Correct.
I've talked to people on the Parks and Rec Committee, and I think they're talking about that having potential use for park purposes still. So it's not urban renewal land, and I guess maybe we shouldn't even be talking about in terms of commercial development, if that's the case, if it came in as park property.
We've gone back and forth on this so many times, but I don't ever remember hearing that there was something in writing about that being park space. If it is, we need to know that, and we need to know that soon.
Well, that starts with what Mr. Graham said. It was
Yeah.
a condition in the deed that was granted to us.
Yeah.
That
We
travels
need
with
to
it.
really know
It
that.
stays
In my
with
mind,
the
in
property.
perpetuity, unless there's some clause that says it can change.
I think there was a
So that's
clause,
square one.
as I recall. We can dig that up. We looked at this several years
Let's
ago.
start with that.
Mr. O'Donnell, that's why we were looking at it for the RV park, because it's something that could be put there without
Yeah.
interfering with the stipulation from the county. I know.
A whole other
I
discussion.
know, but I'm just saying that was one of the reasons why that was looked at. Now, it's the little piece that's closer to Dune Drive that's kind of in that little bit of a hole that we're trying to figure out what could be done with that. And it could be, I think it could be redeveloped, but we need more information. They need more information. Some of us remember that, so I want to rely on my memory.
Is that within the urban renewal district?
Yes.
Yes.
Does it extend all the way to the banks of the river?
No.
Is our current RV park in the urban renewal district? Okay,
So,
yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the land that we described as what would be primitive camping, which would be south of it, is in the urban renewal district?
yes.
The whole park is never renewal district.
Well, I just want to make sure. I was touring it the other day, and it has to do with what do we want to do.
Yeah.
Do we just want to gloss this section, as there's a multitude of things? Is there anything of particular interest to anyone up here?
There is for me in terms of besides the courthouse, the seismic retrofit. I want to concur with Commissioner Cross said that those two projects, the quiet zone and the seismic retrofit, are two projects that I think need to come to the top of the cream for downtown because they go hand in hand. And anything that we can do to provide some seed money or studies to help folks investigate what it would, what the cost would be to do their upper story. The Downtown Association had a workshop last year where they invited half a dozen property owners to come in, and they did 2 little feasibility studies on a building downtown to say, okay, if you were going to convert this, here's what you'd have to do, here's what would be needed. And we have a couple of buildings, I think, downtown that I would be considered, using the colloquialism, low-hanging fruit, that could be a pilot project for us to take on to help a property owner do that. And that could help then again jumpstart. But that, it goes, as you said, goes hand in hand with the quiet zone. So those 2 projects could be running in parallel. And again, it would be a win-win and spur other people to do something. The courthouse, as some of you know, I recently had a meeting with Commissioner Chair Smith, and they are very interested in working with us on looking at what could happen with the courthouse, but of course they have to have their vote first on whether they're going to move the courthouse, which is supposed to happen, I thought it was supposed to happen this month, their vote to move forward with their project. But everybody's kind of just perched on the precipice to start getting into the courthouse, and we will have some difficulties while they're still operating it. We can't really have people running in and out of there looking at it because it's got security issues, and it's kind of similar to the project I worked on with the Multnomah County Courthouse. We got to go in it to tour it like at 7 o'clock at night and had a guard with us because we were in secure areas, but that building has some of the same kind of constraints. But she is supportive of the redevelopment potential of the property. She didn't say she'd put any money into it, but I said that's a conversation for another day. But at least we've got 2 or 3 of the commissioners that support working with us on redevelopment potential of that building.
Well, since this is kind of a visioning session, I mean, when you talk about the courthouse and the options for it, are we talking about private ownership or Oregon City ownership or Oregon City urban renewal money to assist?
It could be any or all of the above. If they told us they'd sell it to us for $1,
that would be sweet.
I don't know if it's got some major problems. It's got major problems, but other courthouses have been rehabilitated and adaptively reused for other things. We know we have the issue on that back corner that's sinking. Is that the right word to use, Tony?
Depends what the seismic retrofit dollars are, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be horrendous.
I think just two things real quick. From our standpoint, when we've been thinking about that property, it's been trying to assist a private developer to come in, get it back on the tax roll, create the increment that we need to do some of the other projects. The second part is Liberty Plaza, I would take for $1.
Yes, indeed, I would.
They are willing to work with us to do whatever it takes to get that into public ownership. That was one of the topics that I discussed with her. We want that for public open space, and however that property gets separated from the Holman building because it's all one lot, they're willing to do that. So we should probably put that /courthouse/ Liberty Plaza on the list because they're not really separated from one another, so to speak.
Are they aware of our desires for
I
Liberty
made
Plaza?
that very clear. Commissioner, former Mayor Lyle Smith had a meeting with Chair Smith about the same thing. I just reiterated what Mayor Lyle Smith said, that we want that property. Mr. Reed concurs. Downtown wants it. The community wants it. It would be an asset for us.
Is it classified as a park now or anything?
It is being
No,
leased
good,
to
okay.
to the Downtown Association for use, but it belongs to the county. It's not classified as a park, but that was part of the deal when they tore down the Liberty Theater. One of the things that the city requested is that be an open space available to the public as opposed to something else going there. So that's how that came about.
Be a valuable addition for many uses. Who had their hand up down here? Commissioner Neely.
Yes, the description that's given here is referring for the need of mixed-use upper story for residential and so forth, which is fine. But I would hope that if a property owner wanted to seek a loan to retrofit and has no plans to put living spaces up above, that'd still be available to them. I mean, so much of what's down there is masonry, and it's
unreinforced.
So I would hope that any business could come, any owner could come forward for a loan for retrofitting, whether they were talking about having living space in that building or not.
Well, I guess that's up to the direction of this commission. The intent with the residential was we wanted residential downtown because we had zero.
Right, I understand that, but the point is, we don't want the other buildings that don't have living space above going down in an earthquake.
So you're just saying that you want to see a seismic retrofit program apply across the board
Yes.
to both commercial activities, because some of the buildings are not able to have residential upstairs. They just can't.
Exactly right.
Matter of fact, if you've never been upstairs in the Weinhardt building, dividing that upper story where they have offices, it would make some amazing condominiums. You've got some great views right out to the river, and the people that have the offices on the Main Street side, they've got some nice views out there.
So that's my wish, that it'd be broader than just for people developing residential on upper stories, that loans would be available to businesses in general, because that's an area, again, a lot of it is fill, and a lot of it is subject to really seismic problems.
Yes.
It is still, Commissioner Neely, closer to the riverside. It's not towards like the Weinhardt building side. That's not fill. So where would Railroad Avenue improvements come into this? Because we've talked about trying to create pedestrian amenities, and every time I see somebody walking along Railroad next to the buildings where that yellow line is, that's quote unquote the pedestrian way, it makes me nervous. I mean, it's only supposed to be, it's posted at 20 miles an hour, but you know, people drive faster than that, and when there are pedestrians, they do slow down a little bit, but seems to me that
I don't know that I've ever seen a plan for Railroad Avenue.
I've not seen a plan, but I think I was talking to Mr. Lewis about some possibility of improvements on Railroad Avenue, and we never got to finish that conversation.
The only improvements I'm aware of are what we negotiated with ODOT related to the Blue Heron redevelopment, which was to channelize the turn off of 99E northbound onto Railroad, improve some pedestrian crossing along the sidewalk into the tunnel. I don't recall another plan for Railroad, though.
Well, maybe we should be talking about it, but when you talk about the improvements so McLaughlin Boulevard, because I'm trying to call it McLaughlin Boulevard, because when people say 99E, they think of it as a highway. So with the description of possible improvements, would there be any way that we could help slow down the traffic? Because I think that's inherently part of the problem. We have those lovely improvements. You come across the second McCullough Bridge, and the speed limit drops once you leave Gladstone to 30 miles an hour. So we've got the trees, we've got the art, we've got nice amenities along there, and people are still driving like bats out of hell. They go through they're whipping through the tunnel, coming through Kenema, which we've gotten the speed lowered to 40, but it would seem to me that we should try to do something to get people to understand you are in town now, you're not on the part of the 99 that goes through, past Kenema, and you're buzzing off to Canby. And I struggle with that because what we're trying to achieve there is not, let's go as fast as we can to get through there. And I understand inherently we've still got trucks and we're still going to have trucks, but somehow getting people to slow down more so that actually pedestrians can make it across the street when the light changes. We've got 2 pedestrian crossings, one by the bridge that not a lot of people use, but then there's the other one at 10th, and then there's the one at 14th that people can get back and forth.
That kind of sounds like a better discussion for city commission than for urban renewal.
Well, I know, but it's still in here, and there's some broader implications there of how it affects both the city and the urban renewal district.
Is there anything else on here anyone wishes to discuss in detail?
I think, I know I have things besides this, and Commissioner Smith also indicated he had something to bring up too.
Right? Is there anything anyone wants to discuss tonight?
What is meant by the last paragraph? So we've got relationship to existing conditions. So I'm assuming some of this relates to the TSP.
Which project are you talking about?
Yes. The last paragraph in number 11, which probably we should break those down into some
Oh, I see.
subcategories, but I'm trying to understand what was the intent. I'm looking in the old plan, and it's basically the same verbiage.
That's exactly, it's a catch-all, because it said the same thing about all of them.
Well, no, I'm talking about transportation and public access improvements, which will improve access and circulation throughout the urban renewal project area for autos, transit, pedestrians, bicycles. So, I mean, to me, this is talking about more than just downtown. This is talking about a broader area, and investment, and it's saying, support new development. So are we looking at how this, again, ties back to what we've got in the transportation systems plan, investments, real estate that are situated in downtown will create more vibrant economy, or I don't really know exactly what that's supposed to mean.
I think it was trying to be a catch-all
It reads as a
for,
catch-all.
So that's where my Railroad Avenue stuff comes in.
well, but, yeah, I mean, because we did use urban renewal when we redid Main Street from 5th to 10th. We did use urban renewal on either phase 1 or phase 2 of 99E. So I think that was probably the intent, just guessing at it, just leaving yourself the flexibility should a project arise that was worthy of investment, whether that be a public infrastructure or a private investment that we haven't thought of or know about when we put the plan together.
Okay.
Okay, we'll throw Railroad Avenue into the catch-all because it's kind of somewhere in there.
I don't want to get off track. I mean, I appreciate the effort, but there's so many projects. At some point, we're going to have to be selective. Yes, it meets the criteria that we discussed at the opening of the meeting. But in the end, we've reviewed everything. What do we want to do to bring this meeting to a conclusion? Where do we go?
So real quick, we had two more. We had the Willamette Falls access and viewing.
Number 12.
Number 12. I think the original intent of that was a tram from Tumwater down to the PG
I
Dam.
see that.
So I guess the question is, when you're going southbound on 99 and you make the sharp left, the office building and the parking lot on the south side of 99E on the Blue Heron site are in the district. So, do we keep potential urban renewal funding for the portion of the Riverwalk that's in the district? And then the last one is 7th Street corridor. I consider that one done.
That's done, yes.
So-
2016, yay.
So I guess getting back to your, so, would you, we have more money, we have more projects that cost more money than we have available.
There it is. And that's
There
what
it
I'm
is. I'm just going to rip the Band-Aid off here.
No, it's.
I would like to take number 11 off because I don't think that's feasible, and I can tell you that the neighborhood would have a complete cow about it.
Not
Take
11.
11 off?
Not 11.
11?
That's the courthouse.
No, number 11 is falls access and viewing, what Tony just said about some,
That's 12. That's
12.
sorry, number 12,
11's
yes.
downtown.
Number 12.
But does that, is the Riverwalk a project? I guess that's something to think about. So I guess two things. Jacob, can you pull up the Excel spreadsheet with
Is
the
that the Riverwalk or is that the tram?
Riverwalk? I don't think there is a tram
Okay,
project.
good. So let's change that to
Hold
quote
on.
unquote in parentheses Riverwalk so we know what we're talking about.
Hold on a minute. Back up to that as described in the document, because it had a very specific project there. Development of a viewing platform with improved parking. I mean, there's going to be viewing platforms in the Riverwalk as it is, are there not? And there's going
Allegedly.
to be hopefully an abundance of parking in the privately developed component.
Yeah, and that item 12 was pre-mill
Right.
closure, was
Closure, yeah.
pre-everything. That was talking about the platform out by the falls with the tram. That's exactly what that was talking about.
We didn't
I thought it was
even contemplate
Yeah.
an access
Riverwalk
from
wasn't even a
99.
topic. It was
I thought
not-
is what you said it was the office building and having because we have those interpretive panels there, and the office building was tentatively going to go away, and there's going to be some view access there.
I don't believe the office building is going to go away at
No,
this point.
that was back before, as Rocky said, that was before.
Well, the specifics of this, as defined, I think can go away. Does anybody see a need to keep it on there?
Nope.
I mean, we're not going to build a viewing platform, and we're not improving parking.
Does having urban renewal funds available for when we construct the Riverwalk as adopted by the city commission a worthy project to get on the list or not? I guess is where I'm getting. The description here is wrong. It's going to go away.
The specifics
Yes,
of
I
this
think the
are wrong.
Riverwalk should be on
The
the list.
allocation of funding, I'm okay with reserving it.
With a new narrative.
Yes,
Yes.
this narrative is
Yes.
incorrect.
Okay.
That's what we're saying. Get rid of what we have. Let's change the narrative.
Let's say it's dated.
They're all dated, they're all 2007.
Yep, that's right.
I mean, these are all dated.
Rocky, do you see this plan? I went through this and gave Mr. Graham all of the markups on what it needed to be changed.
So I consider 7th Street to be done.
It's done.
We have to track the costs that the expenditures we made, but it's not a project anymore. And then Civic Complex, I believe that this was thinking
Yeah.
about where the current city hall is.
Yeah.
There was some discussion about maybe buying the Poe building across the street or the residential office that's kind of south of us, right behind, next to the dentist's office back there, or what became where the flooring place is. I think everything I'm hearing, I'm thinking that is not a project anymore.
Yeah, it was about connecting the library and the city hall to.
Yeah,
a
With the fire
complex.
station in there and Ermitinger, yeah.
Yeah, there was supposed to be some sort of pedestrian access, maybe under, exposing Singer Creek to have it go through there. And that, I think once they started putting the dollars to it, it was just like, oh my God. So,
So what's the next steps in this meeting?
So I guess, so I'm going to tell you where we're at, kind of what we tried to put together was on, it's going to be page, what is that, James? Page 6 of your packet. It's going to say Oregon City Urban Renewal Projects categorized in inflation dollars. So it's essentially this spreadsheet that's up on the screen. So we did two things with this. We took the projects that were in the plan and we tried to break them down by publicly owned, public-private partnership, and infrastructure. We had talked about breaking them into those three categories. And then we had the existing 2007 plan dollars. And what we did was, like for the Cove, for example, we had $8 million identified in the 2007 plan. We spent money trying to implement that project. So we subtracted those dollars out. And then we took the remainder and applied the construction inflationary number from 2007 to today's dollars. So we're worried about if we put this, we want to be realistic because what we're going to see are two things. Our maximum indebtedness is not going up. So that is a hard number. Mm-hmm. So when you apply the CPI to the estimates that we had back then, you can see that we're up at 185 million. So we've got to cut $55 million worth of projects. Or reduce how much we plan to invest in those projects. So there's two ways to get there, a shorter project list or less money into the projects. And just one more thing real quick. The other thing I wanted to point out in the staff report, hopefully you caught, I asked Matt, so currently we bring in a little over $3 million in TIF a year. We've got $6 million in the bank, which is really just a one-time expenditure. But the $3 million in TIF essentially brings in, where did it go, Matt? At 5% over 20 years, the $3 million is roughly 38 million. So, without any new increment, that's what we have right now. I can't go get $70 million. We do not have enough increment. So, when we think about prioritizing projects, that's why it's so important to think about trying to get additional TIF coming in. Because if we do our first 38, and we spend it all on public projects that don't bring in any additional TIF immediately, we are not doing any more projects for quite a while. So I just want to make that clear, because this is going to be the part where we're going to have to either prioritize projects, what don't we want to do, what do we want to do, what do we want to add? We haven't even had that discussion. Parking garage, $42 million probably, or no, 12.5 million, 15 million probably. Downtown bathrooms, there's probably other things that we haven't even got to discussing yet of folks who had ideas. So at some point, we're going to have to go through either a prioritization or really, scrutinizing what we can invest. So, sorry, Commissioner Cross.
Yeah, I mean, the only thought was, it's always going to cost more. I don't know if I want to cut the list down to the dollars we have available right now, because a lot of these properties are owned by private, and, they might or might not want us involved. They only want us if they need some cash. If not, they're going to build what they want. So, we have a wish list. So I would say I'd rather not go to the 80 or 90 million we have left or whatever. I'd rather not make a list that fits that. I'd rather put it, over 100 million, or, just prioritize the list, because a lot of things that we're going to prioritize, the landowners they're not going to want. I mean, you have to talk them into doing it. Like we're talking about the lumber place, or any of those really. That's my point, is I don't think we have to whittle it down to the dollars we have available. I think we have to figure out which ones we think are a priority.
Yeah, I feel that when you start applying criteria, you look for the greatest return on your investment, and maybe you look for the fastest return on your investment to generate TIF. Then you throw in the complicating factors of privately owned land versus publicly owned land. So then when you start selecting those projects, what do you come up with? Greatest return on investment, fastest return on investment, and do you postpone a potential investment by urban renewal, knowing that our criteria are those that take issue with urban renewal will say all you can do is finance the debt. So as you look at those projects, we don't control, we know the timing on some of them. And if we allocate money to one, it takes it out of the total dollars available to allocate toward another. So are you asking to prioritize, having made all those?
Well, how would we like to do? I mean, do we want to, go back, if everybody thinks about what their priorities are, come back together so we can have that discussion in a group, kind of put it up on a board? Do you want us to, we've identified, I think, a couple of projects that aren't going to be, we're going to take out the civic complex. We're potentially taking out the Clackamas County shops. Do you want us to take that list and we'll just put numbers generally to them so we can see where we're at? Because I do agree, it's kind of like a TSP, right? How much do you want to put in and how much do you want to charge on the SDC, right? You don't necessarily have to collect 100%, but if we did that, there has to be a realization that not every project's going to get done. And then I think the other conversation I really think we have to have is, what is the expectation for closure because of the district? Because, if I sit here and think about this, you roll out, let's say we're successful, we want to do $35 million worth of projects coming out of the gate that we've identified. That leaves, 50 million? Like if we're going to do, create enough increment again to then do, it's just that 20-year horizon keeps rolling unless we're going to stop doing projects and put more TIF into paying down the debt to be done. So those are, it's just thinking about that. I've heard, let's shut it in 10 years. Let's shut it in 15. Our first debt we take out, and if we go do that, it's a 20-year, unless we're going to create a bunch of increment, not do any more projects and just put it into paying down debt to shut the district.
I think the analysis is pretty complex because if you think about it, the timing to be able to bring the project on is critical. And then you think about the largest project will bring the largest increase in TIF, theoretically.
Theoretically.
But I mean, I look at it and they talk about, again, you talk about the Rossman landfill. I mean, the numbers associated with that are huge. The numbers associated with any other project are lesser, but the investment by urban renewal is less. It's at, 7-to-1 payback, 10. So maybe we look at, maybe for decision-making purposes, we look at time, payback, and maybe a ratio, UR dollars, payback versus UR dollars, and you look at timing to start realizing the TIF, because it can be self-sustaining. Would you agree? I mean, over a period of years, say a large project comes on and the TIF increases so much that it essentially helps you finance other projects. Is that a proper analysis?
Absolutely.
See, that's how I see it. Then the question is, where do you want to put your eggs?
Well, I mean, I guess you could think about it like this, right? Let's say we took out 20-year debt, 38 million, 5% interest over 20 years. It costs us $3 million a year. So to do our next 38 million, we need to create $3 million in TIF or wait 20 years to pay it down, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I got to come up with another 3 million to do the exact same amount.
Well, which of the projects, and when we do this analysis, which is the fastest return on the investment and a ratio of our dollars we throw in versus our return and our time to realize that return? So there's multiple factors there.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that can be analyzed. And
I agree, yeah. And we're going to have to, in order to come up with a schedule as
Yeah.
part of the plan, we're going to have to make some assumptions on when projects potentially happen and that increment comes online.
Yeah, I don't think we can make a decision tonight and prioritize them, but I think gathering that data with those factors would really be an aid to decision-making. Questions or comments from the balance of the?
Well, this whole thing makes me nervous because we see the 2022 dollars, and we've got projects that extend out for more years, and of course the numbers are going to be bigger. And so I think what we can do in the short run is probably beneficial to us, because those projects will be done and won't be.
Okay, I've had that thought too, Doug, but then, we talked about.
Excuse me, could you say that again?
Well, it's a case of we're looking at 2022 dollars.
Sure.
And we've got projects that aren't going to be done in 2022, so the numbers are going to even be larger. That was
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean,
so,
you could just inflate them, at this point.
yeah.
Could I ask for a clarification? On the publicly owned, can you separate out city-owned property, just call it 12th and Main, and then put city-owned property McLaughlin Boulevard? To me, that would be a lot clearer, since we know that there's two separate parcels, because when I think of the property at 12th and Main, I don't really think of that as McLaughlin. The backside of it's on McLaughlin, but we've always called it 12th and Main.
Well, so, yeah, I think we'll separate those two. I think the number 6 is referencing the ones next to me. It's just there wasn't a very good description, and it was hard to tell what it was referencing.
But I think because it was under the downtown one, 12th and Main, I think that's kind of where it ended up being a catch-all, but we know that that's a major project, so it should be its own. So that when we talk about the McLaughlin property, that really is the property on McLaughlin adjacent to Clackamas Park.
I think we'll just do a better job of trying to clarify.
Yeah, just call one 12th and Main and the other one McLaughlin. That way it's just clear.
I'd like to go back to Commissioner Neely's point, which is well taken. I mean, you start thinking about a project and getting it to a point where it has generated TIF. In any case, no matter what, I don't think there's anything on there that happens rapidly that generates a significant amount of TIF. So Commissioner Neely is, using Stimson as an example, which is in itself is probably a 2 to 3 year project. you know, and there would be a return on that, and there would be an investment by UR. And then you look at the Rossman, and they talk about breaking ground in 2023, but to get it to a payback period, 25. You know, so we need to do an analysis about, and I don't want to run through it again, time to return, ratio of return. You know, there's a lot to be said for a small success for urban renewal to get people on your side for other ones. But I think we need to, I'm asking a lot of staff. I mean, those are the decision points that we need. And if we can do that, do you think we could do that? Not knowing it won't be entirely accurate, but it's
something.
It's a thought about what's our return, what's our speed of return, what's a TIF will generate. But the largest project is going to generate the largest TIF for reinvestment purposes. So if one generates $40 million in TIF and it's a 4 or 5 year project, and one generates 10 and it's a 3-year project, then you start making choices.
Yeah, I don't want to base my decision solely on what's the biggest, baddest project. Like you said, I'm ready, as Commissioner Smith is, to get something going so that we can say, look, we did this, we said this, which is why under communications, I want to know what's going on with 10th and Main.
The only thing I have to say is I think we have more than 38 million. We have 6 million in the bank. We could do 38 million in bonds. By the time we sell the bonds, we'll have another 3 million next November. We're really looking at 47 million, probably have to put $1 million in reserve, 46 million. I mean, that's half the district we have available almost.
Yeah.
So I think we have a lot more money than we think we do, or the ability to buy.
I agree.
I still think the bigger projects are, because you'll generate say it's a 5-year payback, you'll generate so much TIF that they won't be 20-year bonds, they'll be 10-year bonds,
That's right.
15-year bonds. Or you'll have the ability to then issue the rest of the debt. I mean, one or the other. I mean, so I think we have to look at those projects, compare them like you're saying, but I also think some of the properties that we own, like,
Both in Maine.
he was talking the one across from the Rossman, it's going to be more valuable if Rossman does develop. It will be a lot more profitable. And when we sell that back, when we sell land, it's no longer considered TIF. That then increases the amount that we can spend in the district. So say we have 90-some million. Say we sell it for $5 million. That's $5 million that isn't a maximum indebtedness thing that we can now reinvest on more projects.
I agree with that analysis completely. I also think fortune favors the bold. So. Okay, have we come to a conclusion? Is there more we need to do?
I think we've come at a pretty good point here, whereby we have to do the analysis, the ratios have to be done. And
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think what I think we understand. I just hope you'll understand. We're making
An educated guess.
Assumptions.
in terms of building type, building value per square foot. I mean, just trying to come up with numbers. And then, we'll have to do a little bit of work, and if, it's a $40 million building, how much TIF does that create? It somewhat depends on what the existing value of the land is when it was frozen. So, I mean, they're going to be estimates. So I just, we're going to take some educated guesses in terms of kind of a mixed use or an office, trying to come up with a square footage, cost per square foot value associated with that. And then see where those come out. And then, at that point, you can just plug them into the timeline, realizing though that any new building realistically is 3 years.
That's right.
Just is by the time you get through negotiation, planning, building, come on the tax roll.
And that's why those return on investment ratios are important to me, because that's part of it. How much you put in, how quick are you getting it back? But I really lean towards the larger projects because the amount of TIF they generate, because that becomes a self-feeding system.
Mm-hmm. Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
So, Mr. Conkle, I know that the city received a little bit of pushback when they did the 7th Street Corridor project. But I believe that we had, as a city, talked about the fact that we were investing in infrastructure was going to lead to more reinvestment in that corridor, which I believe it has. There's very little vacant space on that corridor. There's increased parking. It has stimulated some growth that we had hoped it would happen on that corridor. And without those infrastructure improvements that we made, that would not have happened. So I think in terms of us thinking about projects, I mean, the one that kind of comes to the top of my list besides the quiet zone as an infrastructure project is looking at making the investment that we need to make in the end of the Oregon Trail Center. Well, we own the property. Technically, it's not, people are going to say, well, it's not generating any increment, but the residual effect of what that facility does to our community and the region itself, to me, is where the investment comes in, that we're making an investment in something we already own, we're not letting it deteriorate any further, and the return, the ROI on that is increased visitation, et cetera, which then ripples out. So I want to make the case that we also look at one or two things on that list like that we know the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get, and we might as well get with it and get it fixed now, as opposed to waiting 2 or 3 more years because there's something really drastic happens to the facility, and then we're like in an emergency mode. So I just want to make sure we don't lose sight of the investment in our facilities that we own and making sure that we get the ROI on that the community is expecting. They don't expect to go to the trail center and find out that, you know, the roof is caving in or something to that effect.
I think we need some direction here. I mean, we have different points of view. So I think we need some
Speak up.
clear direction
What are the
here.
2 points of view as you see them?
One, investment in public infrastructure, or I should say, or investment in projects that may not deliver a increment right away, but can add to the economy overall. And then another view is to invest in larger projects that could give you more bang for the buck and almost create a self-sustaining situation.
I think,
And would that be correct?
I think they can coexist. I don't think it's 2 separate viewpoints. It's just 2 different types of projects.
I think we've identified some projects that are going to come off. And,
Yeah.
okay, so how about we go back, start putting some numbers, and we'll keep the rest of the projects. And then the Urban Renewal Commission can think about it between now and our next meeting, as we're going to have to then go through and either prioritize or play with numbers or a combination of both of those. So I don't think we need yes, public projects are in,
Right.
or no, public projects are out, because there may be a mix there. And I think that's a discussion you need to think about and then have.
I think that's a good place to leave the meeting with the executive.
I just don't think we'll get there. I don't think we can get there tonight.
No.
No, I don't either.
Commissioner Smith.
And I don't want to
pick them,
make
we
that
can't.
decision tonight because I think if it's an investment of urban renewal money to a public facility that doesn't connect to a larger development, then I don't see the purpose of that.
Nor do I.
But if an investment in the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center coexists with the development of the Rossman landfill, and there's some synergy there, and
Amtrak station.
right, Amtrak station and all of that, then that makes a lot of sense, and that would be a bigger project. So and that's one of the reasons, after we narrow these down, that I want to revisit that list of non-city-owned properties that are of interest, because I find it, we have like the county shops. Well, that would probably come off that list of
I think that was the
right?
direction we received. Yeah.
But as we've moved on, because a lot of this was based on this 2007, there's other properties in that core that might be of interest. And 2 of them that I'm shocked were never kind of listed are the 2 pieces, the 2 parcels that close off Rossman landfill from the end of the Oregon Trail. Those 2 pieces of property, one of which we talked about tonight, we own a small piece, which is the old the old Chamber of Commerce, the lawn service property, and then the triangle piece behind the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center. Those 2 pieces are very important, and I think they're very important because, in my mind, in my mind, if I see a successful development at Rossman Landfill, I do not want to see what we did at the Oregon City Shopping Center in the Cove. If you look at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center and consider that Oregon City Shopping Center, and you look at the Rossman Landfill and consider that the Cove, those are two pieces of property, two projects that could be amazing together. But if those aren't connected, and if Rossman Landfill is built with a frontage to Abernathy and a frontage to Washington that does not connect with the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, we've screwed up majorly. Because the traffic's going to come in that way, but we want a connection from the Amtrak station to the end of the Oregon Trail into that development up on Rossman Landfill. If there's not a connection somewhere that makes sense, broader than the 30 feet that's shown on this plan, we've really screwed up, because there's a potential there to create something amazing that, kind of solidifies what we want to see that whole area being. I don't want to see this amazing development that fronts the freeway and people come in and go off and there's no connection to the rest of the city. And so that can open the door, I think, to some investment in the end of the Oregon Trail that really ties well with what would happen on Rossman Landfill. So that's enough of that.
No, I totally agree with Commissioner Smith. I mean, the goal is to make Oregon City a destination. If there's land in there to be acquired that we can dedicate to increasing our offerings, we need to be thinking in those terms. And everything Commissioner Smith said is absolutely correct. Any final words from any members of the commission? Oh, I knew it. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm teasing.
I'll ask Mr. Conkle under communications.
We have communications. I was going to cut it
Yeah,
short.
I don't have any communications.
All the agenda.
I was just going to gavel Commissioner McNeese for fun, but I didn't.
All right, you're already on my list.
Always. I reside there. I've lost my agenda. Communications.
Nothing for tonight.
Nothing tonight. Anyone? Any communications from
What's the status of 10th and Main?
Oh, good question.
We'll give them a call and see where they're at. I think you talked to them about a month ago, maybe?
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that one.
Thank you.
That's exactly why I asked about deadlines on development.
I know you did. That's why I said I wrote it on my agenda, communications, because I've only been asked by half a dozen people in the last week, and I said, I don't know.
Yeah, there was a sunset clause on that. They had to do something by a certain date, I believe. I hope.
You're right, but I don't think we've gotten there yet, but I'll check, make sure.
If you would. Anything further? Very good. This meeting's adjourned.